Metal Gear Solid is one of the most fondly remembered games of the original PlayStation. Not only was the gameplay amazing for its time, but the way it elevated storytelling was incredible, and it made me a lifelong fan when I finally played it in 2003. Yes, I was that late to the party. After playing through the original a few times in a month, I went out and grabbed Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance for my OG Xbox. While I didn't enjoy it as much, Xbox version shortcomings aside, it too was a solid game, pun intended, and one I spent many hours on trying to finish all of its VR missions with a friend. My Metal Gear Solid itch was further satisfied in March 2004 when a remake of the original was released on the Nintendo GameCube, Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes, developed by Silicon Knights. This version took the original game and crammed it into the aesthetic of its sequel, and it remains to this day an interesting way to experience it with both great and questionable changes to the source material. A U.S. Special Forces unit based at a nuclear disposal facility on Shadow Moses Island in Alaska's Fox Archipelago has gone rogue and is threatening to launch a nuke if the government doesn't hand over the remains of the greatest soldier to ever live, Big Boss. Unwilling to give in to the demands of terrorists, the government tracks down the soldier who killed Big Boss, Solid Snake. Snake has lived in exile in Alaska since his fateful encounter with Big Boss as portrayed in the MSX game Metal Gear 2: Solid Snake. Threatening to have him arrested if he doesn't comply, Snake agrees to infiltrate the facility to help free prisoners and see if the terrorists have the ability to launch a nuke. What Snake encounters during his mission has far greater implications than anyone could have expected. The story of Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes is told through numerous in-game cutscenes and radio calls over Snake's codec. Every scene and piece of text is completely voiced just like the original. The story is fantastic and remains one of my favorites from Hideo Kojima. However, depending on your love for story content or if you are doing a 100th replay, the codec scenes can be rather intrusive and interrupt the flow of gameplay. At one point in particular at the end of the game, you will be stopped multiple times on a single catwalk for more exposition. Cutscenes are more over the top compared to the original thanks to the better tech offered by the GameCube over the PS1. Some land great while others less so, but overall Twin Snakes gives its players access to the same great twists and turns and characters of the original. Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes is a stealth action game that gives players the tools and choice of how they approach any encounter. Want to sneak past enemy patrols? You can do it. Want to rampage through everyone you see? You can do that too. Well, as long as you can keep your health up, that is. Stealth is the way the game is meant to be played, but giving players other avenues of success is appreciated. From the start of the game, players are introduced to the Soliton radar, which provides a wireframe outline of the current area and enemy locations with vision cones so you can plan your moves for your preferred style. The default setting for the radar is to have it behave like the original game where being in a crawl space disables it, but in Twin Snakes this can be changed to have it display even during these sequences. For a more challenging experience, it can also be disabled entirely. Every set piece from the original PS1 version has been remade in the same style as Sons of Liberty, with new first-person aiming mechanics being available for players to use at will. The changes this makes to gunplay and overall progression are a stark contrast to the original. Dealing with enemies before would take a set number of hits depending on the weapon, and you couldn't take out enemies on different levels. Now you can easily see an enemy below you and easily eliminate the threat. This can make some of the game's harder moments more trivial by comparison, but it is fun to traverse Shadow Moses with new abilities such as hanging from a ledge. Snake's roll, shooting from corners, and 2-punch spin kick combo are also included. As briefly mentioned earlier, the classic ability to crawl is still here as well. If you do get discovered, enemies will enter an alert phase and shielded reinforcements will be dispatched to deal with you. In this phase, the radar will be disabled, so you won't know where they will be appearing from. To escape the alert phase, you either need to eliminate every enemy in the area or successfully escape enemy sight and hide in any available vent, locker, or the iconic cardboard box. After the initial alert phase has been ended, enemies will do a clearing phase where they try to locate you, as again seen in Sons of Liberty. Once the clearing phase ends, enemies will remain in a caution phase for a set duration of time with added enemy reinforcements to any area you enter. After the caution phase ends, enemies return to their normal positions and numbers. A quality of life improvement introduced into the game from Sons of Liberty is the M9 Tranquilizer Pistol. This weapon allows you to easily take out enemies and remain undetected. Shrink rounds wear off over time, so if you plan to be in a single area for long, reapplying a dart to the face is wise to consider. If ammo is a concern, you can always sneak up behind an enemy and put them in a chokehold. Applying force to the hold is needed to keep an enemy from escaping, and by doing it enough you can render the poor sap unconscious or snap their neck. Leaving behind a body carries a risk of discovery, so dragging them out of sight or stuffing them into a locker may be necessary. Another fun addition from Sons of Liberty. Other various weapons have also been added, like a tranquilizer version of the PSG-1 sniper rifle, or naughty magazines and empty weapon mags to distract enemies with. Another change from the original game is how players interact with doors throughout Shadow Moses. In Metal Gear Solid, players need to use their menu to select their keycard before a door will open. In Twin Snakes, players can just walk up to doors and they will open as long as they have the right clearance level. This saves time on trivial menuing, which is greatly appreciated. Speaking of menuing, players now have access to the same item grouping menu featured in Sons of Liberty, with the ability to either quickly unequip items or swap between two different ones with a double press of either trigger on the GameCube controller. Another time-saving change for the game's final act added an area in the final hangar where you can quickly heat or cool a certain card. Again, time-saving by eliminating backtracking, but it makes the game more easy overall. There are too many changes made to the Twin Snakes over the original for me to list them all, but these specific ones have always had the most impact on my playthroughs. While learning enemy patrol routes and figuring out how you want to deal with them is how you will spend most of your time in Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes, every iconic boss fight from the original game is present to shake up the routine. Every boss fight can be handled exactly like in the original game, but some can become extremely easy thanks to the new mechanics like the Revolver Ocelot encounter. Dealing with Sniper Wolf with improved aiming mechanics also makes those fights far more enjoyable. Unfortunately, the sniper aiming is extremely sensitive, so it will take some learning to keep it trained on her properly. The ninja fight is still excellent, but does have quite a generous hitbox when it comes to landing hits on you. It is possible to cheese this fight in Twin Snakes if you just don't want to deal with it. This can also apply to the second Raven fight, where the sniper aiming from a prone position essentially makes you invulnerable to his weapons. It's unfortunate that this wasn't more polished, but it is what it is. Psycho Mantis remains the most memorable of the bunch, with his ability to move your controller around with his mind, and read every move you make, plus the contents of your memory card. The inclusion of various first-party GameCube games in his dialogue is fantastic. Despite being a thing since '98, having to physically move your controller to another port to take on the fight never gets less impressive as a way to deal with a baddie. The final boss encounters still hit hard with exposition, but overall are much easier than in the PS1 original. As a whole, the cast of boss fights in Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes remain as memorable as ever, and some polish aside call back to the originals respectfully. I also appreciate the inclusion of being able to take out bosses in a lethal or non-lethal way, even though story-wise, it makes no sense. One of the most controversial changes to the original Metal Gear Solid for the Twin Snakes release is how it changed the audio in a love-it-or-hate-it fashion. Every piece of dialogue has been re-recorded to better match that scene in Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. This includes the recasting of Mei Ling and Gray Fox and the removal of foreign accents from both these characters, plus Naomi. The quality of the acting is still well done, so it never bothered me as much as some of my friends. Music, on the other hand, I always found more impactful and memorable from the PS1 version. Twin Snakes uses an entirely new score, and while it is still good, it just doesn't hit the same way. Sound effects and environmental effects are well portrayed, and the inclusion of Dolby Pro Logic 2 makes them more immersive than ever. Twin Snakes is a very visually pleasing game thanks to its nice 480p presentation. As with many of its mechanics, the art style is pulled from Sons of Liberty, tying both games together better than the PS1 version. There are some discrepancies between them, such as Snake's eye color or Meryl's hair color, but these are minor things. Other visual flares like the psychedelic effects during the Mantis fight are fantastic additions. Shadow Moses is more detailed than ever, with good models, textures, and a mood that still holds up well today despite their lower resolution. The classic green codec scenes with pixel art invoke a ton of nostalgia, and it was smart to keep them over the 3D character ones found in Sons of Liberty. Cutscenes as a whole feel cinematic, and most are well done and look good. There are a few that portray Snake's character in an odd way, such as drawing a gun on the hostage he is sent to protect. Others are also extremely over the top, making Snake a superhuman in the worst ways possible. Overall, Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes is an excellent remake in my mind. That being said, the changes to the audio work are controversial, and you will either like it or hate it. Visually, the game is fantastic, but certain cutscenes are too corny for their own good. The addition of first-person aiming also trivializes much of the original game's difficulty. Twin Snakes does include several different difficulties to play, but the aiming and the fact that you always start the game with a full life bar still has them fail to match the intensity of the original. The complete removal of any VR missions found in the original or integral releases of Metal Gear Solid also hurts. The worst thing about wanting to play Twin Snakes today, though, is that the game was pressed on poor quality discs and many copies are no longer usable. I fell victim to this myself, but I thankfully had backed it up years prior since the price to replace it is ridiculous. Twin Snakes offers many reasons to revisit it despite its lack of VR missions. Collectible enemy dog tags are present throughout every difficulty, with some requiring non-lethal boss takedowns or backtracking to find new soldiers patrolling an area. Like the original, there are also 2 different endings to experience that unlock different items to enjoy on another playthrough. Numerous rankings are awarded depending on how you play, with a big boss ranking being the ultimate prize that requires you to play on extreme with no radar, unscripted alerts, kills, or deaths. After unlocking the camera item, various staff ghosts can be found hidden throughout Shadow Moses, with some being exceptionally weird. Finally, a boss rush mode sees how fast you can eliminate each of the game's bosses with limited items. There are 2 difficulties available, with the hard option being even more lethal than an extreme difficulty playthrough. I love Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes, its questionable changes and all, as a companion to the original game. I feel it is important to experience both for different reasons. For a quick way to experience the story more easily, I feel Twin Snakes excels. Sadly, Twin Snakes has been stranded on GameCube for over 20 years, left out of the various Metal Gear Solid compilations thus far since it wasn't Kojima's version of the game, despite him being a producer on it. For fans of the series who might have skipped it, it is certainly worth experiencing at least once. I hope that someday doing so may be easier than it is now. Thank you all so much for watching today's retro review of Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes. I'm really sad that this game is still stuck on GameCube, especially given the problem most of the discs seem to have that people own these days, but hopefully one day this game will come to us in a more modern fashion, maybe with the Master Collection too. I don't know, that would be an awesome addition that would make me buy it day one, to be completely honest with you all. But really like this version of the game, even if it isn't the original vision of the game. I think it is still a great way to experience the story, and the story is just always going to be just one of my favorites. But what do you all think about Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes? Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please share any memories, hatreds, or whatever's about the game. Love to read it. But we're going to go ahead and call it here. Thank you all so much again for watching. And thank you to our backers for voting for Twin Snakes for this week's retro review. Just the usual favors here at the end. If you haven't already, thumbs up, thumbs down, depending on how much you like this video, as well as hitting that sub button and notification bell so you can see when new videos go live on the channel. Loads always coming your way, and I'd love to see you all along for the ride. And if you'd like to further help support the channel and vote on different retro reviews for the week, you could check out that join button here on YouTube or the Patreon link in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Get access to the backer channel in Discord, and we vote for which game's getting reviewed. Big shout out to all of our current backers. Just thank you again for supporting us and then just making this a bit more interactive. But till next time, my wonderful internet peeps, you all stay awesome, keep on gaming, and we'll see you back next video.